Hello, everyone. Welcome to part two of lecture two for SOE 260, describing language. And I wanted to do something a little bit different for this section of the lecture this week because I like to try and make things as practical as possible for you. And this is how I would teach this to you if we were in a traditional lecture where you were standing in front of me and we were in a classroom together. What I did was kind of break the content this section of this week's chapter into a lesson plan, and this is how I would present it to you. The objective is to explain the procedures to collect valid samples of child language. A lot of what we talk about is going to deal with researchers of child language on a larger scale. The purpose for our class is a small scale. We're going to investigate language samples, video recordings, and I have several examples of that for you, or one example in the syllabus for you, and posted in the in Blackboard. And on the flip side, there are researchers who get into this, and then the question of validity is always going to come up in research, and we're going to discuss some things that researchers do to try and lessen the impact of the possibility of a sample being biased or tainted. Okay, but how we're going to accomplish this is a little bit different, and I hope helpful for you, and apply some of these things to let your when you're writing lesson plans for your courses in the future. And keep in mind that even though we use the Kendall College instructional design template, that is one of several templates that you can use. Wherever you go to work, you'll probably be asked to use a different template. But there are a few things that are always the same and always in a lesson plan. And this is bare bones, but you always have an objective, there are always procedures, and there's always an assessment piece. If you have those three things, you can pretty much fill in the rest. And I like, personally, my personal way to plan is to think of the end first. So I think of the assessment. What do I want my students to know and be able to do as a result of what I teach? Once I have that set up, I can figure out the objective and procedures as to how I get there. And lesson planning is the heart of what you do. The bulk of your day and your time is going to be planning. If it's not, then you need to sit down and rethink what you're doing because it should be. And finally, I have close it out, revisit the objective. And what I mean by that is I've witnessed, and myself, I'm guilty of this, several times I've been planning or giving a lesson and not closed it out. And it's a pretty simple step to do. And one way to do it that's super simple is to revisit the objective. So basically, you read the objective. I like to write the objective on the board, go over it first thing, and then go over it at the end, because then you're starting out clear of where you're going, and then at the end you can go back and talk about where you've been, and you can ask students, do a quick assessment with students, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of our talk today. But that's a quick and easy way to do it. So let's get started. Lesson topic is collecting valid samples of child language. All right, that means valid. That's a big word in research, and we're going to kind of get into that. And I want to talk about some of the issues that researchers face on large scale type projects. And I mentioned this of what I want you. You always have a purpose for what you're teaching. Always have a reason for a lesson. Don't just do something for the heck of it. I mean, sure, it's nice to have fun once in a while, do that, but make sure you always have a purpose, whether it's team building, whatever it is. In this particular case, it's my objective is the students will explain the procedures to collect valid samples of child language. And again, view this from the lens that you are a student in a traditional lecture hall with me. I would have this PowerPoint up and be going over this just as I am now. So there's my objective. Explain the procedures. All right. Now, I have my procedures section, and notice that it's written in numbered format, or you want it to read like a recipe. So you're going 1, 2, 3, because this is what you'll look at if you're teaching a lesson and get confused and kind of lose your place. It happens, and you need to refer to it quickly and go back. If this was all in one big narrative or paragraph form, it would be hard to figure out where to pick up where I left off. But this in numbered format is a lot easier to kind of get back on track. Um, if you look at this, you'll see the link to the Owen's Companion website, and I urge you to go check that out. And it's going to be a big part of our course. And there is a section of the website called Vocalization. And we're going to do a vocalization workbook in this course, and you're going to have 5 samples total. And one of those samples is going to come from somebody you know or have access to, a neighbor, nephew, niece, whatever, have access to, and you're going to provide some data and some research-based data on that child. Um, and we're also going to discuss issues to consider for researchers. Okay, so please note the procedures will continue after the next few slides. So again, I might not, if we were in the classroom together, I might not necessarily show you these because you don't really need to see it. It's just more to give you an idea of how I would be thinking of what I'm thinking as your instructor. Okay, so now these next slides go through what researchers of child language consider. There are a lot of questions around the method of collecting data. How do you collect the data? Do you do it, especially in child language, do you do it spontaneously in a conversation sampling, a natural observation, or do you structure the setting? Okay, and so what I would do, I would show you these slides and obviously give you more information than this, but this gives you an idea of some of the issues that researchers face. Some more issues, how large of a sample size it should be, do you account for group differences, the diversity of the population, all right? And then even yet more issues to consider. And this is all in your book, and these are for large, keep in mind, these are for large scale investigations. So a big research project. You are conducting a one-on-one type project. So it's research, but it's not something that you would generalize to the greater public. It's just that particular student at that particular time. Okay. And this gives you examples of some collection procedures that researchers use to get about child language. Diary accounts, checklists, parental reports, as well as observation. And you can do any of those for your observation. Obviously, they're good, solid collection procedures to collect child language samples. So it's up to you what you find most comfortable. And if you can, video recording is great. And it's better than audio because you can see the actual nonverbal communication, which they say is about 60%, which is crazy, right, of what we're trying to convey. Okay, and then I just want to discuss this with you. Again, you are pretending that you're my student in class. We're all sitting there talking, having a great time, going over these slides. You're going to see the words quantitative and qualitative a lot throughout your program. And what I want you to do now is just remember these. Okay, so remember these kind of keywords. Quantitative, when you hear that word, think numbers. Think statistics. Think, using numbers to describe a phenomenon. All right, and qualitative, think words to describe a phenomenon, where there's rich language. For your research project, for the vocalization notebook that you're going to keep on going through the course, you're going to write qualitative information because you're going to spend one shot with this kid and kind of get as much information as you can. So that would be more of a qualitative research method. And the magic number is 90. And what that means is whenever you have 90% of things, of like 90% of your analysis procedures add up and kind of have the same theme, you can be pretty confident that you've found something that is valid. And again, this is general. That's more for back to the big, larger scale research projects. Not for you, but something to keep in mind. Okay, back to the procedures. What I would do, again, pretend we're back in the room together. I would have you work in a small group and generate a list of procedures used by researchers of children's language. You would do that by using the slides that I just showed you and your book, or whatever other resources you have, the computer, whatever. And I would give you these 5 questions, and basically it just summarizes exactly what we went over. That's what your team would do. You would work in a team of 3 or 4 and come up to the answers to these questions, which again we just went over. And then finally, assessment. I have to assess what you do. And this is something that I want you to do with every lesson that you do and teach. A lot of people think of assessment as tests and big high stakes state tests that students take, which is true. They are definitely an assessment, but assessment for teachers occurs daily and continuously, and it drives our instructional decision making. We make decisions on what we teach based on what our students know and are able to do. Okay? So I want you to ask yourself these 2 questions with every lesson that you create. Does my assessment tie directly to the objective? If so, you can be confident that you're good to go. All right. Let's close it out. I would assess your ability in this particular lesson to meet the objective by asking all the groups to come up to the front of the room and share your team's research plan. This would help you demonstrate your mastery of, or lack thereof, of the objective. I would also collect the student lists and ask students to put their initials by each of their ideas, so I know who came up with what idea, which would give me even more evidence as to who knows what about researchers face when collecting child language samples. And then finally, as I said, revisit the outcome. This is from the beginning, if you notice. The students will explain the procedures to collect valid samples of child language. I would say that out loud, and then I would say, okay, that was our goal for today. How many of you feel like we reached this goal 100%? You know some things about collecting valid samples about child language. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, and then I would wait, and then I would say, all right, if you kind of know a little bit more about it, give me a thumb sideways. And then finally, if you don't really understand anything that I'm talking about collecting valid samples of child language, give me a thumbs down. That quick assessment is strong and powerful, and although it's not anything elaborate, it does give you a lot of information very quickly to know what you need to revisit, reteach, and it gives you a springboard to jump from for the next lesson, or kind of what you need to go back over. So thanks again. I hope this was helpful, and we're going to move on to the last part. All right, see you in a minute.